secretary to call the roll.
Okay, Greg.
Present.
All right. Gus, I see that you're present, but you'll be non-voting.
No, he's
voting.
I know I went through all the hoops to like send them the agendas so they could print it out and leave it on the table here where it's publicly available and all the things.
This is in.
Good job, Gus. I'm going to put you as present, Claire.
Thank you.
Which members you have in the room there?
Okay.
Yes, here.
Okay. Ann?
Here.
Kimberly? I'm going to say not present.
Not, okay.
So we have a quorum and we're ready to go.
Scott. All right. Call the meeting to order. We begin with reports from government officials. Let's see who we have here. Harvey, would you care to start as traditional?
I'll be glad to. I have a couple of infrastructure items that are related to the Midcoast that the City Council has considered as high priority, and we're going to find out how much we can actually fund. But one of the items is a coastal skyway or tram or a gondola or a rope highway. We are going to investigate a feasibility study that would put the coast side on the map as one of the few areas that are actually going to have a skyway going over the mountain. The other infrastructure item is something that you have heard a lot about, and that is community broadband or community fiber. And we're going to be exploring that as a way to get around the what I think Greg calls the oligarchy that pretty much control how we communicate over the internet. So those are a couple of items that are going to be investigated. Who knows what's going to end up happening, but if either or both of those happen, I'm sure it's going to have an influence on the Midcoast. So that's my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I would make one minor correction. It's an oligopoly, but it does lead to oligarchy. So, both are true. I see Catherine Slater-Carter raised her hand. Catherine, your report? She's suffering from the digital divide in Montero.
I wonder if Mike would want to say something as well.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
But he didn't raise his hand.
but he's here.
Yeah. Mike would have been on first.
Well, while we're waiting for Catherine, let me just acknowledge Dave Wolfman, Councilmember Emeritus, is in the audience, as is Mike O'Neill, a representative for Supervisor Mueller. Ray, are you going to say anything since Catherine can't appear and speak right now? No. If you have anything you want to speak, you can. Okay.
He's muted though. We might not be able to.
Okay, I will fix the muting, but no, she's unmuted now. But go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Hello, Harvey. How you doing? Hi, my name is Mike O'Neill, and I work for Supervisor Ray Mueller, District 3 here in San Mateo County. And he wanted me to have a few sharing the announcements here. Yesterday's Board of Supervisors had some big votes. Ileana Rodriguez was appointed the new Assistant County Executive Officer, replacing a woman named Peggy Jensen. Yesterday, the Board of Supervisors voted to stop assisting federal immigration authorities. Supervisor Ray Mueller voted no, just because it did not provide an exception for persons convicted of the serious and violent crimes of rape, murder, and child molestation. But he wants everyone to know that he is supportive of the county's move to become a sanctuary county and wants everyone, regardless of immigration status, to feel safe in this county and know that he supports them. The Board of Supervisors was supposed to hold a study session on the opioid and fentanyl crisis, but it was postponed to the May 9th meeting due to the agenda of this meeting. I understand it is of interest to the MCC, and we can coordinate to bring the same presentation to you guys once it happens, okay? We are continuing to recruit for Coastside County Commissioners for the following commissions. Information can be found at the www.bnc.smcgov.org. And that's for the Parks Commission, Youth Commission, Coastside Design Review, Commission on Disabilities, and Behavioral Health Commission. Tomorrow, April 27th, Supervisor Mueller will hold joint office hours with Half Moon Bay Mayor Deborah Penrose at Cafe Mezza Luna from 8:30 to 10, and we'll all going to be at Dream Machine on April 3rd.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Catherine, are you ready to go now?
I don't. Can you hear me now?
You can hear you now.
I'm trying to figure out this computer thing, but anyway, can you hear me?
You can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, that's all you need. Okay, first I'm going to report on a major issue of concern to the coast, and that is the dredging and sand renewal at Surfers Beach, the sand replenishment. One of the regulatory agencies, I believe it was Coastal, has decided to have us do more work on our permit. And so it's going to be delayed yet another year.
Catherine, I'm sorry, you got muted. You there, Catherine?
Am I here? So the district has been doing everything it can to get this through the permitting agencies, and we were almost there. And then I believe it was Coastal decided that no, we needed to do more work on a permitting issue that has never been an issue up until after the permit had been issued. So it was issued and then it was rescinded, and now we have to do it's eelgrass. And so my suggestion is to everyone watching, I will get the name of the coastal staffer in charge of this, but I would also request that the county help us get this permit going. We need to replenish the sand on the beach to protect the highway. And we need not just a little test project, we need to get a whole lot of the sand out of the harbor for the boats and for the replenishment of the sand. So that's number one. Please, county, help us.
Right. Mike has stood up. Can you let him respond?
Please.
Hi, Catherine. Can you send me, an email with like whatever information you have to see if with the county can send in a letter of support?
I will get that going to you and to all the members of the Board of Supervisors so we can get a strong effort. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
The other is about Sam. A couple weeks ago, you may have seen the headline in the paper about Sam had decided not to pay to have testing at the sewer plant, not by neighborhood, but at the sewer plant for we started out with COVID, but the company that was doing it has branched into being able to use that for fentanyl and other drugs as well. But Sam decided it is not in Sam's mission to be testing the community for drugs because it really doesn't have anything to do with how we process the wastewater at Sam. However, and this is for Mike, we did say if the sheriff's department or the county or somebody wanted to pick up this bill, and it's not much, we would be more than willing to make it part of our regular testing process and send the samples out and pass the information on to the sheriff's department or the Board of Supervisors or anybody in the county who wants it. So we'll add that to the letter too. I think with the fentanyl crisis and there's some other drugs coming in that are beyond my comprehension as to how dangerous they are to the people who inadvertently use them. Fentanyl's death, and so are these others, and there's other terrible things too. So I would like for the county to be able to be on top of knowing where these things are. In the presentation that we had on the drug testing, it was interesting to note it tended to go up a lot on holidays and 3-day weekends. Just saying.
Catherine, could you send 2 separate letters, because they're gonna have to go
Yes.
to separate departments? Maybe we can have it included in that fentanyl report on May 9th to the supervisors.
I would be happy to do that. The other is about the SAM budget. And it was not passed with enough votes for it to get moved on to the member agencies, for each of the member agencies, Half Moon Bay, Montera, and Grenada, to be able to consider and then get back to SAM. Due to the emergencies and accidents and all that fun stuff in January and into February, the budget got delayed a month. And I was hoping that the budget could have gotten passed last Monday on the 24th, but it wasn't. The problem is Half Moon Bay, and you can go to the Pacific TV and watch the meeting. I suggest you do. The problem is Half Moon Bay is asking the other member agencies, Mandera and Grenada, to sign a stipulation saying that if we lose the lawsuit, we will pay them back the money for this pipe break of the SAM pipe that is located in Montera. Our attorney at SAM, Jeremy Youngrice, said Half Moon Bay can pass under protest anything they want, and that in fact they do not need the permission of either Montera nor Grenada to be able to vote for the budget under protest. So we're going to have to bring it up on our next meeting. If it gets delayed, there are so many problems. And one of the biggest problems is paying the crew. This is what happened in 2017 when Half Moon Bay decided not to pay what it owed into the operations of the SAM plant. And our crew was just on the edge of comfort because they need to be paid. And they've had raises, but prices are higher now. And we really should not be treating our crew or our primary public health agency on the coast with this stuff. If Half Moon Bay wants to vote under protest, they're more than welcome to do it. Montera and Grenada, and I'm repeating myself, I realize, do not need to give approval to that. I would think since they're suing us, they really haven't asked for our approval for much anyway. So the budget is critical to the public health of the coast and to the folks who work on the coast. I will be reporting on this when I get more information, but that's the way it stands as of Monday night. Thank you.
Catherine, one other thing that I heard at that meeting was that, and I'm not privy to the closed sessions, but apparently SAM has signed some form of agreement with an entity that sued them and under a federal lawsuit, and they have agreed to fund these infrastructure repairs post haste. And so that's part of the reason that this budget needs to be approved. whether there's an internal fight or not, they're under a decree or something like that, right?
Well, Sam was sued by a environmental organization called ERF, and I apologize, I've forgotten the name of the acronym. They work on clean water lawsuits, and this was for a break and a big spill that happened years and years ago. So they sued us. Sam settled. It was voted on, and every single agency voted to sign the consent decree. That was 5 years ago. Due to various circumstances, the work hasn't gotten done. And this is the pipe that broke during the storms in January and spilled 4 million gallons of sewage into the ocean. It was a lot. So the agreement said we would get the pipe break, get the that particular pipeline fixed by 2024. We had a investigation of the pipe, and they said it seems to be okay. We couldn't do an invasive investigation because it's an old pipe. So we got a company from Germany to do this investigation with magnetic imaging and so on, and they said it's okay. But then when we had the water shock, the water hammers or something happened during the flood of the plant that caused a ripple effect upstream and caused that pipe to break. So now we need to either get it done by 2024 or get an extension from ERF. We are hoping ERF will give us the extension. Our attorney is in discussions with ERF. We're not sure it will happen. But one of the things that our attorney said in open session is we need to look good to ERF to get this extension. So it's important that we fund this and that we fund it at $3.5 million. That's a lot. You guys are going to be seeing your sewer rates go up because we have to fix this. It's been put off for too long. But now even the budget is getting delayed. And so we're not sure, number one, how it will look to ERF, whether they will give us that extension or not. This is a federal case. It is separate from the lawsuit, and it's a separate agreement made with ERF. So yeah, there's getting our folks paid, and then there is this other major problem about this other lawsuit that we didn't spend money on to take it to court. Instead, we decided it would be financially better and more ethical and better funding if we just took the money we would have spent in court and spent it on fixing the pipes. So that's where we're at. Again, I am hoping that attorneys can talk this out. Board members can talk it out, whatever it takes. But it would be best if we could get it signed, if we could get the budget passed. I will say that the attorneys for both Montera and Granada advised their clients, that would be Montera and Granada, not to sign the stipulation. So we were following the agreement of our attorneys. Half Moon Bay's attorney told them to get us to sign the stipulation. So it is, it's a mess.
All right, Catherine, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
For the record, I want to know Kimberly Williams has joined us, but she'll be non-voting, but I do want to acknowledge she's present.
I got it. Thanks.
Now, I don't see other government officials. So unless somebody is, I'm going to move
Just
on.
two hands.
Right, there's like the two hands raised, but they're not government officials.
I wanted to make a MWSD announcement that Catherine omitted, and I'm a board member.
You're representing MWSD. Thank you, Sid. I didn't
Okay.
know that.
And I later would like to make a public comment, but could everybody please save the date? September 9th, MWSD is having their anniversary celebration, 65 years for the sanitary district and 20 years for the water district. And we have decided to have it at 888 Cabrillo Highway, and details to follow. But that's about the only date left in September, because there's a Fog Fest, there's the Montero Street Fair, there's Labor Day weekend, and something else, I forget. Anyway, so please mark your calendars, September 9th.
Okay, point of order.
Question for Catherine. I thought these hands were raised questions for Catherine, and
Oh, sorry.
I also have a question.
I
for
do.
Catherine.
I can leave my hand up because I do have public announcements for other stuff.
Okay, but first, Dan has a question for Catherine on her statement.
Yeah, I just wanted.
I'm here. I'm unmuted.
Yeah, hi, Catherine. I just wanted to. I think you reported for both the Harbor District and MWSD. Is that correct? Can I ask a question about the Harbor District?
I lost part of chunk of your words. Could you repeat,
Question
please?
about the Harbor District. A Harbor District question.
Yes.
I can't. Okay. So, Catherine, are you aware that before the current bathroom project, there were 23 unregulated general parking spaces, and as a result of the bathroom parking or the bathroom project, the general unrestricted parking is going to be reduced down to 6, from 23 down to 6, and no general parking will be allowed to face the ocean. Are you aware of that parking layout plan, the reduction of the public parking at that as a result of the installation of the bathroom? And there.
I have to say that was done before I was on the board.
I know that, but I was just, are you aware of it? Are you aware that there are many people in the community that are concerned with this, losing all this parking?
Dan, I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware that the project was done and finalized before I got on the board. As you know, I have objected to that lease, which turns the what was supposed to be an RV parking area for short term into a long-term living area, and I was not part of the negotiations. So unfortunately, all I can tell you about that is the bathrooms are that project is going to be finished, and the coastal trail will be finished through there. The rest of it, I'm sorry, I wasn't on the board and wasn't able to do that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure you're aware of it.
Thank
you. That's it.
Okay, so Len, you have your hand raised. Is this for public comment, which we're ready to take now?
No, it's what Catherine talked about.
Okay, go ask Catherine then.
So Catherine touched briefly on sand replenishment type of projects. I'm talking later on under an agenda item that deals primarily with the coastal highway and the trail in terms of impact of nearby storms, but extending into discussion of other projects. But I'll deal with that then, and you've been copied on that, Greg. So what I have, I'll bring it up under that item.
So he has more information in the program.
Yep.
Okay, then I think we're ready to go back to Sid Young for public comment questions.
Not really any questions, I don't think, but this is a reminder. Last time I was on the MCC meeting, I posted the Fire Safe Council RCD chipper program dates. And so this is just a reminder. I left it in the chat last time, so hopefully you put it on the MCC website for people. May 1st in El Granada and May 8th for Montera Moss Beach. And there are certain streets, so if you have branches and stuff you want them to come and chip for free, you've got to go on, and I think you may have to register for that, but I already gave that information last time. I don't want to take up too much time on that. I was on the CFPD meeting for a little bit today, and they're moving forward with the Moss Beach Fire Station, and there's going to be some public engagement there at some point in the future. But the thing on the topic now is coming up May 13th is the cutoff if you received a weed abatement notice. And I'll tell you, I just was begging my guys to come out and mow my 2 lots. Anybody that has a vacant lot with too many weeds because of all the rain we have, you've got to get it done before May 13th, or they'll send somebody else out to mow it for you, and it goes on your property tax bill. So that's just one notice. Lisa Ketchum had a really wonderful informative presentation today at the Planning Commission regarding coastal armoring and erosion. But unfortunately, at the same time, this was at the County Planning Department. Steve Monowitz mentioned that they would continue issuing building permits to property owners near the cliff, the eroding cliffs, because of private property rights. But if the road falls in, so be it. And then, most of us don't want to see Highway 1 at Surfers Beach fall in and have to be moved eastward. But I think Fran Pollard mentioned that there was some erosion along there and that it hasn't been repaired, and that Caltrans and Half Moon Bay are not interested in repairing the part at the cherry stem that's their response. What?
Lynn's going to speak to that later in the agenda.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I didn't hear that part. And then there was one other thing. Let's see. I think that was it for my things. I really think if you guys get a chance to look at her presentation, or even maybe have Lisa come and give the same presentation to the MCC, that would be fantastic.
It's on the next agenda.
What? Oh, good. Okay, thank you. And that's it for me. The person, MJ O'Neill, that I tuned in a little bit late. He's with taking over Peggy Jensen's spot as the
is our liaison with the supervisor. He's in the room, and he'll be supporting us in our efforts to work with the county.
So I thought he said he was taking over Peggy Jensen's spot in the county executive's office.
No, that was a different announcement.
Okay, thank you. I did miss part of it. Sorry. That's it. Thanks.
On to the consent agenda. So I'm trying to keep, we're a little bit late already. We have minutes for March 22nd and April 12th. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda or take other action?
I so move.
Seconded. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Oh, Greg.
Aye. Dan?
Yes.
Gus?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Okay, that's passed. All right. 6-0. So for our first major agenda item, we have Reed Bogert here from City and County Association of Governments to talk about stormwater management in San Mateo County. And I apologize, his presentation is going to do a lot more than that. Reed, I made you co-host. Are you with us, and do you believe empowered to show your presentation?
Hi, Greg. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm with you, and I should be able to share my screen, so I will attempt to do that. And it will probably just take me a second to pull up my presentation here.
Just as a side note, Reed mailed me his presentation. I believe it was 158 megabytes.
Yeah.
Which kind of gets back to our second world telecommunications infrastructure here. We can't post a presentation that big on our website or even in our Google Drive, but we condensed it down on our files. Go ahead, Reed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, council members. Greg, for having me tonight. I'm Reed Bogert, Senior stormwater program specialist for the countywide stormwater program, also called the San Mateo Countywide Water Pollution Prevention Program. And Greg has invited me to have a discussion with you to present some context for the countywide program and hopefully provide some additional information on what we do on behalf of the cities and towns in the county of San Mateo with respect to stormwater management and planning versus what the local municipalities are responsible for. This conversation kind of started after the big storms that we had this winter, and I think it's pretty relevant given kind of the extremes that we're seeing in terms of increased precipitation events, but also, extensive periods of drought, and how do we think about managing stormwater more sustainably. So we'll cover quite a bit of territory. Feel free to ask questions along the way. You can interrupt me at any time, or we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. And Kimberly, it's good to see you.
Group. Yes, a big mistake with this group. You take the questions at the end, or you'll never get done.
Okay, well, I take that back. No time for questions. Just kidding. Good to see you all. Yeah, I recognize Kimberly. We have worked together on Surfrider Foundation activities in past. I used to help with beach cleanups in Half Moon Bay, and actually grew up in El Granada. So I'm happy to be with you all tonight. Okay,
Thanks,
so I'll just go. Yeah, good to see you. So here's a bit of an agenda. I'll provide background on our countywide stormwater program, talk about the multi-scale approach to green stormwater infrastructure planning in San Mateo County, which is a big part of the overall program strategy and day-to-day activities. The item 3, case study projects, is actually something I originally planned to include, and then I pulled that out, so we'll skip that. But there are some example projects along the way. And then there is a section of the slides focused on funding and funding need, which I think is probably the most important piece of this conversation. So a bit of background on the countywide stormwater program. CCAG has, so I should say the City and County Association of Governments, for those that are less familiar, is the countywide transportation agency. We also have been the home of the countywide stormwater program since the early 1990s, when the first municipal stormwater permits went into effect coming out of the Clean Water Act. And so we've been doing that work since the 90s, and we support all 21 municipalities in San Mateo County with implementation under a municipal regional stormwater permit, which is administered by the San Francisco Bay Water Quality Control Board. And we also support One Shoreline, the Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District, with the same compliance work. The program is funded by two property taxes or property fees on the county property tax roll, and we generate about $1.5 million in revenue per year from the property fees. And we also are allocated a portion of the $10 vehicle registration fee, Measure M funding, and we get about $1 million at this point per year from that revenue. We have a small team of staff, currently one full-time employee, myself, and we are actually hiring a director position, and we typically would have 2 full-time staff plus our team of consultants supporting the program. And we, as I mentioned, primary function is to support the municipalities with permit compliance. It's a clean water permit. And the permit itself is available on the Regional Water Board website. It's probably 700 pages long or so, and there's quite a bit that falls under the purview of the program. But we do support local implementation. That includes things like public education and outreach. We perform a whole series of training activities, support our member agencies with individual subcommittees on various permit topics. We do compliance directly on behalf of the agencies, and a significant bulk of that work is water quality monitoring focused. There are other aspects of direct compliance that we support, including planning efforts. And we participate in regional collaboration with the other countywide stormwater programs in the Bay Area. Here's an org chart for our program operating under the CCAG Board of Directors. The Stormwater Committee is a group of representatives from each of the municipalities, typically public works directors, and then we have a series or a set of subcommittees operating under the Stormwater Committee, informing each part of the relevant provisions of the permit, from new and redevelopment, green infrastructure implementation, outreach and education, inspection programs, trash load reduction, which is a big focus of the permit, watershed assessment and monitoring, which is the water quality monitoring work, municipal maintenance operations, and pesticides and integrated pest management. So we have work groups or subcommittees focused in each of those areas. And we have a new stormwater permit in place. Just went through a reissuance process. The permits go for 5 years. And so the new permit, which we call MRP 3.0, came into effect this past July 1st. And we have a whole new set of priorities. The permits tend to increase in requirements over time and sort of set higher and higher goals for water quality, which is a good thing, but of course takes resources. So these are some of the priorities in the new permit. There are new regulated project categories in the new and redevelopment sub-provision. There are new requirements to address PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls in old industrial areas in particular. New monitoring requirements for trash and low impact development or green infrastructure. So those are totally new and quite expensive actually. And then there are a set of new requirements focused on discharges associated with unsheltered populations, firefighting activity discharges, asset management related to some of the stormwater treatment controls, green infrastructure and trash in particular. That's totally new. And cost reporting, which is a Clean Water Act requirement to actually track and report costs of compliance under the NPDES, the stormwater permits, something that our regional board has not instituted until now. And so this is kind of the lay of the land moving forward. I did want to share just a little bit of context for climate change, since this is very relevant. As I mentioned at the outset, a couple of years ago, we completed a countywide sustainable streets master plan. So the focus was on street improvement projects, and this was intended to support the municipalities with implementing green infrastructure plans as required by the permit in the last cycle of the permit. But we took a grant opportunity to do some additional work looking at future storm impacts. And this is not, by the way, part of the municipal stormwater permit as a requirement, but we thought it was a good idea to look at how future storms might impact our roadways and how people get around, and where the potential benefits would be of doing more green infrastructure to manage those bigger storms. And so this series of graphics shows the downscaled climate change assessment that we did, basically for different design storms. And so you have a 2-year storm all the way up to a 100-year storm. And so those are the different frequencies of those size storms. And you can see the darker blue is the more significant increases in runoff depth. And for a large storm, 50 to 100-year return storm, it only happens every 50 years or 100 years, historically at least. That's changing now. You might see something upwards of 1.5 to 3 inches increase in storm depth for that storm size, which is big. That's a lot more volume of runoff than you would typically see. And so even for a 10-year storm, which is also the typical standard sizing criteria for storm drain infrastructure, conveyances is a 10-year design storm. That may be 25% bigger based on our projected climate change scenarios. And so that basically tells you that your current storm drain infrastructure is undersized for future conditions. And we saw that as a result of these big storms, we had flooding everywhere. So we did that work, and just wanted to flash these excerpts from various storm drain master plans from some of the cities. So you see the names here: Belmont, Brisbane, Hillsborough, Half Moon Bay, Atherton, and some of the language here is emphasizing those concerns about deficiencies in the storm drain infrastructure, maybe failed pipes or inadequately sized pipes. And many of these plans were developed years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Some of them are a little bit more recent than that. And so you add climate change on top of this. Those master plans took into account large storm impacts, but under historical conditions. So if you account for changing conditions, this problem is only going to get worse. So what do we do about that? It's a big concern, and I see Carlisle's hand as well. I mean, we've had Carlisle attend stormwater committee meetings in recent sessions. And so we're hearing, and you're all hearing this and expressing concerns about the problem and what do we do about it. I'll share a bit about our program's focus, and I will emphasize that the goals and the mandates are focused on historical precipitation for sizing of infrastructure and on water quality, not necessarily water quantity. There are flow components to the permit requirements, but they're essentially seeking to maintain the natural hydrologic cycle, not necessarily adapt to climate change. So I just want to put that out there at the front end here. So I'll go through the various scales of green infrastructure as sort of part of the solution and talk about each of these and what our program is doing. Much of this, you'll see some nice graphics and images and renderings from our planning work. We do support primarily planning of green infrastructure and other stormwater strategies. We don't necessarily support implementation. And so the municipalities are kind of left on the hook to build, to plan, to design, plan, and construct infrastructure and to maintain it over time. And all of that costs quite a bit. That said, we have in the past provided some funding for local implementation, including demonstration projects, and there are a couple on the coast side in Moss Beach at the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve and near the post office in Moss Beach. Those were a couple projects that our program helped fund. We have a few pilot projects near schools that we helped fund through some of the regional stormwater program funds that have been unspent over the years. And then also seeking grant funding and asking, actually, quite frankly, just putting out requests to our legislative representatives at the state and federal level to request earmark funds to build projects. So we do kind of, we have those resources and we do make those asks. So these are the three scales. Parcel scale is just managing stormwater rainfall where it hits the ground or hits buildings and sites, and it's managed on site at the parcel level. Most of that implementation is done actually through new and redevelopment projects and is paid by the development community, which is great. There's a lot of progress that has been made through new regulations requiring green infrastructure on development projects. Street projects, street scale is managing runoff at a block scale or bigger, and typically would look something like a green stormwater curb extension, like the image here, where you're collecting runoff from the roadway and sidewalks and managing it in those engineered bioretention cells. Could include trees, which are great, vegetation that's adapted to those conditions. These projects are typically paid by municipalities or through grant funds, and we are actually trying to advocate for better integration of transportation funding with green stormwater infrastructure to leverage the dollars there, because there's just more available for transportation improvements typically compared to greening improvements. And then at a regional scale, you can go big and put something very large underground, capture hundreds or even thousands of acres of drainage area. These projects can go under playing fields, under parking lots. Those are really sort of the go-to types of sites for a large retention or detention project. And I'll show a couple examples of that. That's actually a big focus of our program at this point. But they cost a lot and but also provide opportunities for partnership with other agencies. So we've done a bunch of modeling to support this multi-scale approach. Here you see the different colors representing project types. So existing projects on the bottom here, and just for the reference, this is with respect to the efficiency of pollutant reduction on the y-axis, and then the implementation cost going up on x-axis. And so obviously projects that are already built are very cost effective and achieving these modeled load reductions, focusing on legacy pollutants, PCBs in particular, mercury. And so future new and redevelopment, we actually have modeled the projected growth throughout the county and where those green infrastructure projects will go in through new and redevelopment. Regional projects, as I just mentioned, are actually quite cost effective at a $1 per acre managed level. And then the green streets projects and other green infrastructure are just much more expensive at a $1 per acre managed level. So that just kind of gives you a sense of how we're prioritizing projects and advancing different strategies. So for parcel scale projects, we do have a few different things going on for CCAG's stormwater program. And so I'll go through these quickly. One is a rain barrel and rain garden rebate program. We also have advanced local policies to support on-site controls, even going above and beyond what the municipal stormwater permit requires. And pilot projects, as I mentioned before, CCAG has helped fund some of those pilot projects. So here are a couple examples, and these are pulled from our Green Infrastructure Design Guide, which has great examples available on our website. And so here you can just see, an opportunity at a school. This would be a retrofit condition, most likely. You could build a rain garden pretty easily. And this is something that we're actually doing in partnership with schools. We're helping with the initial steps of planning campus improvements that link green infrastructure and other outdoor classroom improvements. And campus green efforts. So here's a transformation of a typical flat roof to bio-retention areas, planter boxes. This is just sort of nice inspiration for what new and redevelopment projects or even public projects could look like. We have a campus here. And so these facilities are designed to manage the drainage area that's flowing to them. So that's the intention. So if you have a new development project or you're retrofitting, you're accounting for that full area of impervious surfaces, the hard surfaces that are draining to that site. And that's how we can have assurance that we're managing the water effectively. Parking lot condition. And here, just a few details on the rain barrel and rain garden incentive program. We do this in partnership with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, or VOSCWA, and we pitch in a portion of the rebate, and the member agencies of VOSCWA that participate pitch in. They match that with $50, so any resident in the county, anywhere in the county, can get anywhere from $50 at a minimum up to $100 for a 50 to 99 gallon rain barrel, and then that works its way up to $150 per barrel, or up to $200 per rain barrel or cistern on a capacity over 200 gallons. And then we have a rain garden incentive program where folks can get $300. It's a pretty minimal amount, I think, but we're testing this. And so if you participate in the lawn Begone turf replacement program through VOSCA and you include a rain garden, you can get $300 back on that. So at a street scale, as I mentioned, here we've done a few things, including demonstration projects. We actually have 10 projects that were just completed in the past couple of years throughout the county. That includes the site at the Half Moon Bay Library. You're probably familiar with that one. Some green curb extensions and new crossings as part of the library improvement. Also the Sustainable Streets Master Plan, which I mentioned previously. The Safe Routes to School and Green Infrastructure Pilot Program, that's actually part of our pilot projects. Those were the 10 that I just mentioned completed. We have one more to be built in East Palo Alto, and then we'll be done with all 10. And then local policies requiring development projects to treat right-of-way areas as part of those projects. So this is actually now required under the permit. Last year and in previous years, a couple of years ago, we were incentivizing or encouraging municipalities to have essentially reach codes for new and redevelopment projects to go ahead and treat sidewalk and adjacent right-of-way in the curb and gutter zone with a new project where that wouldn't necessarily be required under the permit conditions. So we included that as part of the Sustainable Streets Master Plan. And just encouraging all and every kind of greening options out there. There's a concept we call tree sponges, where you can basically have a small bulb out in a sidewalk and plant a tree. It wouldn't necessarily be sized and built to the specifications for a typical stormwater project, but it could add a lot of resilience. So that's something that we advocate for. So here are the streets projects, and this just gives you a sense of the layout of the plan. We developed typologies for different scales of street projects, from curb extensions at intersections, so the first bubble there, longer connectivity improvements focused on bike and longer kind of commute-based rides for cyclists, and streetscape improvement projects where you might have a downtown Main Street or something like that proposed for new roadway. Could be a road diet, could be a transformation of the parking structure and the adjacent sidewalk improvements with street trees and new seating and other kinds of bioretention greening elements. And then frontage improvements were part of the policy recommendations for having new and redevelopment projects actually build green infrastructure in the right of way as part of those projects. So here's an example at, I think this was Rollins Road in Burlingame. You can see the transformation into a fully sustainable street where you're maximizing the benefits for all modes of transportation, focusing on bike and pedestrian use, and then including those resilience and greening elements for water quality, safety, heat island reduction, and the whole 9 yards. So this is kind of the ideal sustainable street project. Here's another example of a downtown street being transformed into a sustainable street. And example of how you could green up a basic residential road, and you may reduce the roadway width, maybe reduce some of the on-street parking if that's there, but those are some of the trade-offs that communities need to make, and there is a public process to go through the design, of course, when these projects are built, but there's a lot of benefit to this kind of thing. Another example of a stormwater curb extension. And so going and switching to the third largest scale of green infrastructure, as we call it, less green in that there aren't typically the bioretention or vegetated components of these projects that go underground, but they can rebuild a park with a whole new landscaping and everything, so they can actually be quite green. This size of a project is something that, as I mentioned before, can actually be a cost-effective strategy to manage more volume for less on a dollar per volume, gallon or acre foot managed. And so we are taking this angle for the program, moving forward with a collaborative strategy to cost share on these projects. This started with the Stormwater Resource Plan that CCAG developed back in 2017 and actually looked countywide for opportunities at each of those scales, parcel, street, and regional, and identified all public parcels that would be suitable for a large retention project or detention project. We developed several project concepts out of that resource plan, the stormwater resource plan, which also actually made those project sites eligible for voter approved bond funding. And then from then, back in around 2018 or so, we've been basically just pushing for opportunities to fund these projects, and seeking federal grants to do that. And a planning level concept for one in Half Moon Bay. So that should be more relevant to folks here. Here's the project at the Orange Memorial Park. In first regional multi-benefit stormwater capture project so we're pretty proud of trans, which is very helpful because of the trash load reduction benefits. Reduce trash. City was air quality goals in the permit, but also to provide resiliency for this watershed, which is highly impervious, has issues of flooding. They're also interested in having a new park built, and so that's actually what some of the funds went towards. So it was really a multi-benefit collaborative effort. And this is the project concept that was developed out of the Stormwater Resource Plan. And you can see the project was proposed in 2 phases. Ended up being the initial project 1 on the sort of the bottom half of the picture there. But the facility itself is, these modular underground subsurface containment, or almost like an underground cistern, a retention basin where the water can collect and slowly infiltrate into the soil. The soils in this area are really great for very sandy, great for infiltration, and so the project is able to collect and infiltrate something upwards of 250 acre feet of water per year, which is quite a lot. And then it's also leveraging water through a treatment system for on-site reuse and irrigation for the parks. So it's truly a sustainable stormwater project. Just the concept images. And then from that project, we developed a collaborative approach, and I won't go through all this in detail, but we set out to work with One Shoreline and our municipalities to think about how to advance countywide stormwater management projects like the one at Orange Memorial Park, or scale up the implementation of rainwater harvest, barrel and cistern rebate programs countywide. Maybe have a program in place to build, plan, build, and maintain sustainable streets projects, and actually have a dedicated funding source for that. So we did an assessment of regional scale projects countywide. We developed a credit trading marketplace feasibility assessment to support the private sector involvement in helping fund projects and testing the feasibility there, and then a funding and financing options report. So if you're interested in this stuff, I have it all on our website, and we can share out links later. And I won't go into these details either, but all of this is basically making the case for regional scale stormwater projects, essentially, and showing how across the various drivers that were identified for water quality, greening, trash, so you can see some of the big highlighted words there, climate change, resiliency, community benefits, and then the outputs of the assessment, quantitative or semi-quantitative indicators of how regional scale projects and regional scale collaborative implementation can achieve those goals better. And so here's a map of the new opportunities. Again, these are regional scale capture projects. They were ranked and scored and tallied based on a variety of performance metrics focused on stormwater management requirements in the permit, but also resiliency benefits, shaving the peak flow on larger storms, and looking at the feasible sites to locate these facilities. And so on the coast side, there's a great opportunity at Sam. It's on Half Moon Bay property, adjacent to the plant, but we are looking at opportunities to even link to wastewater treatment systems for recycled water use if those come online in future, or to help reduce some of the impacts to the wastewater treatment plant during storm events if that is an option. It could be even combined with wet weather flow capacity, which I know has been updated at the SAM plant. So that's sort of the way we're thinking about stormwater projects moving forward, is how can we increase the benefits across the water sectors, not just thinking about water quality, but how can we start integrating our planning and our thinking about the benefits of stormwater capture. Also thinking about water infiltration where that's feasible to restore groundwater where it's actively used. That's more typical in the north part of the county. And so this is a map of the regional collaborative program, essentially just showing how we could make this whole thing work. We have projects being built, so we need something in the ground to basically inspire folks to help pay for ongoing maintenance or the cost of construction if it hasn't been built yet. Once we have projects in the ground, then we can start having agencies pay into them. And so that's actually something we're working on now for the Orange Park project, specifically for the maintenance and ongoing monitoring needs for that location. And so you have, one or two projects built, and then there are units of exchange associated with the benefits, and that brings folks to the table to help pay into projects. This could eventually move into a market-based program where you have private and public entities paying into the program. Maybe you have a regional collaboration O&M fund, and that helps with ongoing inspection, verification, maintenance requirements, and the whole thing kind of cycles through. Some entity would need to administer the program, so assuming CCAG could be that, or One Shoreline perhaps. And so this is sort of the infrastructure. Maybe there's financing associated with the agency or agencies that are operating the system, and eventually you might have a community-based program with enhanced delivery, something like a CBP3 or community-based public-private partnership program delivery, where you have cost savings and additional benefits like workforce development and so on. So I know that's a lot. Don't expect you to absorb everything there, but just want to kind of show that we have a framework in mind and we're moving this forward slowly. So here's the Half Moon Bay project I mentioned at SAM. It's a large multi-benefit stormwater capture concept in concept design at this stage. We don't have funding to build it. We don't have necessarily full stakeholder buy-in, but that's, we got to start somewhere. So it drains a huge watershed area of Pilarcitos Creek. Proposed diversion from the creek channel to a dry or wet detention wetland basin at that property. And the major drivers, it would actually provide significant water quality benefit through that wetland basin. Peak flow reduction, as I mentioned, potential green acreage requirements could be fulfilled under the stormwater permit. So these are some of the basic drivers. This is what the project could look like. It could be something else entirely. The design work would need to be done. But we did do this initial cut at what a wetland retention or detention basin could look like. And here are some of the benefits. So, you're managing a significant portion of the flow through the channel, 20 to 30%, based on the cubic feet per second running through the diversion, and then some of the pollutant reduction and volume managed metrics there. Could also help with trash reduction, could support integration of wet weather storage, recycled water. As I mentioned, maybe that's on the horizon. But this is the sort of first take at what a multi-benefit project could look like. I'm going to skip through this slide. Not much here. This is just showing some of the requirements for greening that the municipalities are on the hook for, and we're coming up with the strategy to support that. So I do want to cover stormwater funding just very quickly, and just to kind of lay the land for what we as a program are seeing as the need for costs and what the municipalities are seeing for their own local costs. So this is based on the storm drain master plans that I referred to before, and you can see the storm drain master plan cost estimates. Many of these go back several years, as I mentioned. Probably, not for reference, probably need to be updated, but huge, right? $500 million of master plan cost estimate on storm drain alone, right? So that's kind of what the local municipalities are facing. San Mateo County is not included here, so you may want to refer to local documents there as needed to get those numbers if they're available. So in the high priority projects, 256 million. This is the dedicated annual revenue from these local agencies. So you can see the gap there. It's just astonishing. And then on water quality, this is for compliance with the municipal stormwater permit, totally separate from the storm drain infrastructure upgrade need and the storm drain master plan cost identification. So to comply with the permit, and this is from last permit, mind you, not the current permit, this is from several years ago, and we did a funding needs analysis. We were actually ramping up towards a countywide funding initiative for the clean water program. Didn't end up doing that because of other competing funding initiatives at that time. But you can see the estimated cost, $46 million to comply with this on an annual basis. Again, huge number. And then the estimated annual dedicated revenue, including CCAG's program, you can see our number up here at the top, 2.2 million at the time. So we have this gap of approximately, $36 million or so annual gap in funding for the clean water program. And so the existing fees, you can see CCAG, this is tiny, by the way, right? $7 annual single family for stormwater programming countywide. That's the standard. Your typical TV, electrical, trash, whatever it is, internet is going to be just dwarfs this number. And then you can see the local municipalities have even less typically. There are a couple with existing fees going back to Prop 218, or in some cases after that. Burlingame actually has a pretty sizable fee for a standard single family home. The rest don't. San Bruno went out for a Prop 218 funding initiative a couple of years ago and failed pretty sorely. And they were proposing going from $46 per year to $154. So this is the funding reality. It's not easy to raise revenue, and that's primarily, as many of you know, the constraints on property related fee assessments based on Proposition 218. For a stormwater property fee, you have to go through a voter approval process, unlike the other water utilities, water and sewer, where you can go through a simple notice and no contest process for the affected property owners, and then approve a fee. Doesn't have to be brought to the property owners for a majority approval, or the general electorate for a 2/3 majority approval. So that changed to some extent with SB 231, a new piece of legislation that sought to include stormwater in the definition of sewer under Prop 218. But there is a mighty effort by the Howard Taxpayers Association to prevent that from being successful, and no local agency or county or special district has gone after a fee related to stormwater under SB 231 yet. So that may happen in future, just hasn't happened yet. And then the other options are parcel tax. You need a 2/3 majority there from the electorate. Enhanced infrastructure financing district is interesting. You could allocate a portion of increased property tax increment over time and generate quite a bit of revenue. But the local municipalities are pretty hard pressed to even allocate something like 1% of future tax increment, because there are competing needs for fire and basic public services. So we're at this is where we are. This is where we are in the mix of things. You have a sense of our program goals and support for the municipalities and some of the struggles towards actually getting projects built. But we are here to support our agencies with finding cost-effective strategies, seeking funding. We also have this new flood and sea level rise resiliency district, which is really ramping up its efforts. We're looking to collaborate more on climate resilience project identification and implementation. So hopefully we'll make progress there. And there are other examples out there. LA County passed its Measure W a few years ago, and they have $285 million per year dedicated to stormwater, which is huge. So it's possible. And then there are other options. Sub-county-wide jurisdictions can work together. They can form or operate under flood control zones. Just as an example, jurisdictional strategies going out for a jurisdictional level funding initiative is another option for the municipalities. So we're kind of trying to support all efforts moving forward. And then here are some resources just wanted to share with the group. These are available on our website, felicitybay.org. And as I mentioned to Greg, this is my first interaction with you all on the coast side. I would like to continue to support projects like the opportunity at the SAM plant or others. And I'm just happy to be engaged with you all. Happy to take any questions if there's time or interest, or happy to connect later too. So thank you very much.
So Reed, while you were speaking, and of course, I saw this in advance because you sent it to me and I attended a session you've done. So I have 25 questions, some of which have sub-questions. And I don't think it's a good use of everybody's time for me to give them out loud here. I think we should let the public speak. And I would request that you allow us to submit something in writing, and you can either answer or direct us to other people if you don't think you're the one who can answer. So with that, background, that there are 24 areas of questions that we still have, let me turn to the people in the audience who have questions, and that would be Sid Young first.
Thank you, Reed. And I really have been trying to inform myself, but by attending your online meetings, the CCAG does seem to be more urban and municipality city centric. So you don't really have any programs specifically for the Midcoast from the looks of things, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We try to provide equal services to all of our agencies. I will say that historically, I think there's somewhat of a bias towards the more urban side, the bay side of the county, and there are more actually water quality requirements in the permit that are focused there. So that does tend to bias things a little bit. That said, the County Office of Sustainability is a very big player on our program, and we have done separate partnership campaigns focused on pet waste on the coast side and other things through our outreach program in particular. We've also supported some of the new developments in TMDL, or total maximum daily load requirements, that are coming online for beaches on the coast side. So there are opportunities to do more there. Also, the Resource Conservation District is a group that I've been engaged with more so as a community-oriented agency. And so I think that's a good opportunity to continue looking for partnership.
Okay.
But to some extent, you're right.
I don't want to cut you off, but I know Greg will cut me off, so don't go on so long on my next few questions.
Sure.
I live in that dark blue area that you showed on the 100-year storm chart, and that's over on the Midcoast section between Pacifica and Half Moon Bay, but on the west side in Moss Beach. And we have had some very major storms in the last 2 years, but I don't know if you realize this, but we do not have storm drain infrastructure on the coast. Maybe Half Moon Bay does, but if we have any, it's very limited. And I just wanted to know if you can inform us about State Water Resources Control Board grant funding. I'm sure we would have to have the county fill that out for us since we're not really an entity. But I know Catherine Slater Carter, whose hand was raised after mine, she was on a stormwater planning group years ago when Jim Porter was the Department of Public Works, but it didn't really go anywhere. I mean, they kind of talked about a few things, and yet right on in Moss Beach where Carlos Street is. There's a section where there's some cattails between Highway 1 and Carlos Street. You're probably familiar with it. That thing didn't hold enough water when the storm came, and CAL FIRE had to come and close off 3 blocks to keep people from driving off of Highway 1 into a lake. And also, as you probably, maybe you haven't heard, but Quarry Park is like 500 acres and it flows downhill, comes right out of the park. It's a county park, but they haven't done anything about mitigating their drainage. And I really see that as a fantastic location for one of your green infrastructure things, and maybe even suck in the CCWD, who's always talking about recycled water. They have plenty of room to build a big retention pond, but they're just like ignoring the problem like it's going to go away or something. And I'm sure there's a few other neighbors on here. I can see the people that live near that park, that they have to get sandbags every single storm that we have. So the question that I have, Greg, don't interrupt me. I just want to finish really quick. He talked a long time on my first question. So my question to you is, do you know if we are in violation of any state laws by just discharging all our stormwater out into the Pacific Ocean here on the unincorporated Midcoast?
Answer is no. The municipalities are authorized to discharge under the permit as long as they implement the permit to the specifications. So the answer is no. Yeah, the storm drain, the drainage infrastructure is very different on the coast side. And I think Parks actually mentioned Parks is a good area to look for partnership with, say, Department of Public Works. I know there's a subcommittee or group, interdepartmental green infrastructure team that was meeting before COVID. I don't know if they still are, but parks are a good place to think about greening and doing stormwater capture. So I would advocate for that, or encourage you to explore those kinds of interdepartmental projects. So that's one place to continue looking.
So when they're just ditching their water out onto, like the most recent thing, it went under, the storm drain went just under the road and out into a field that's a county park property, and then it ran downhill to Highway 1 and covered over the brand new $4 million multimodal trail they were building. And it puddled up there for the whole winter that we had of the bad storm. So all that water is just allowed to rush out onto the ocean, you're saying?
It is, yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not necessarily being managed the most effective way, and water will go where it will go, right? As you all have seen.
Okay.
So
that was my question. And you don't know of any grants from the State Water Quality Resources Board that we could get?
I'm not familiar. Yeah, I'm not aware of any planned Proposition 1 stormwater funds, which are the typical implementation grants. Those could be coming. There was around a couple of years ago. So that's something to look out for as well, but I'm not aware of any current solicitation.
Yep. Great. Thanks so much.
Catherine, you've been waiting?
I have. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry I missed your name. Is it Kyle?
Reed. Yes.
Reed. I'm sorry. I wrote the wrong thing down. I have a couple points to make. One, I'm very well aware of the proposed flooding solution to save Sam. For those who don't know, we came within mere inches of losing the entire Sam plant this year on December 31, January 1, and it would have had the electrical building gotten hit by the floodwaters, we would have lost all sewer systems on the coast for a year or more. It would have been a major disaster. This was not a little thing. I did read your report, at least part of it, that one you presented to one shoreline, and so one of the questions that comes up to me is that particular reservoir that you're talking about is probably deeper than the standing groundwater. It's a very low elevation location next to a creek. Have you had that peer reviewed?
It's a good question. It's very preliminary. It's noted in the report that additional geotechnical analysis would need to be done to sort of vet the feasibility on that project. So yeah, that's, I think we can't say at this point a wetland basin could be dug down to various depths, but those larger retention systems would typically go up to 10 feet underground, which would probably not work in that site. That would need additional work to evaluate the feasibility.
And also, when you have this peer reviewed, there is a great deal of evidence. It was first brought to my attention by Deborah Ruddick, mayor and city council member, past mayor, city council member, that sea level rise is pushing up interior ground level water amounts. So if we get the sea level rise, we're going to be even losing more capacity on that particular site. You can reach me. I'm the chair. Actually, for those of you who are old fashioned, I'm the chairwoman at SAM, and would love to talk to you more. I hear your push for taxes. When I was on the stormwater committee for the county, when I was on Midcoast Community Council, they were trying to get the folks who are getting flooded, the older residences in the older houses, to pay for a groundwater or stormwater system that's caused by bad development uphill. And the bad development is caused by the county, who does inadequate storm capture on the new development sites. You get a 5,000 square foot lot, you cover it with 50% coverage, all of a sudden you've got 2,500 square feet of water to figure out what to do with. They were having the builders dig little holes to run their drains into, their gutters into. I don't think it's working from what I've seen recently. So are you looking at the causes of some of this? And all of your ideas are great. That's one question. All of your ideas are great, but Montero, Moss Beach, and even portions of El Granada have green streets. The water, it gets absorbed by our streets. We have open natural drainage with plants that the county comes through and either asphalts or takes the plants out of. And then the drainage goes uncontrolled to the ocean, which, by the way, is against your stormwater permit. And it's been that way for 40 years. So I'm concerned that these stormwater permits aren't particularly closely looked at least for the uncontrolled. So I'm concerned that the taxes you're talking about, you said, are on a per residence, per house basis. So these large projects with big driveways and parking and 200 units will be paying the same $7 as a single family house. I think you need to rethink what you're looking at. The same for the big commercial buildings that are going in. These things are not residences. Are they going to get taxed $7? I think we need something that's fair for the people who are here. But again, I would love to talk to you about the SAM plant, and also all of this would not have made one iota of difference to those who were getting flooded this year in Montero, Moss Beach, and El Granada. Not one little bit. We need somebody who's looking out for the residents of our community and protecting the ocean from this unfettered, unclean runoff that we saw going willy-nilly through the pipes and just pouring into the ocean, turning the ocean dark brown. So please, is there a program at CCAG we can address for that?
You asked good questions, and I don't have answers to all of them. And in terms of the tax assessments or the property fees, the existing fee structure is tiered, and it varies for different property types, and so in commercial have a different assessment compared to single family homes. I do think that if we were to propose a funding initiative to increase stormwater fees, we'd have to go through a pretty thorough process of Sorry, my son's joining us. We'd have to go through a thorough process.
Let me interrupt. Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
It's very nice that your son can join us, and thank you to having him in the room with you.
Sure. Yeah. He always likes to check himself on the camera. So yeah, I guess I would just say that, I would like to have additional discussion with you, Catherine, and I'm glad that we're making this connection with respect to the SAM opportunity. I think that, it's the green infrastructure is a piece of the solution. As you mentioned, it's not going to solve major flooding issues. Those projects are designed to handle, or not even handle, but to basically mitigate some of the effects of like a 2-year storm, right? Not a 10-year or 25 or 50-year storm. So it's really just a small part of the solution. And I think assuming we move forward with a new funding initiative at some point, we need to build capacity for community support. That's one thing I think that we're lacking really significantly across the county. Burlingame is one of the only agencies that has had a successful fee initiative in recent years. They tried twice. The first time they failed, they developed a robust community support effort and were successful the second time. And so we, a big focus of our work now, CCAG is actually developing an equity framework for better community engagement. And I'm hopeful that we will advance our program in a way that is more community focused and will hopefully provide the information and opportunities for community members to drive some of the planning work and the prioritization of projects and the type of infrastructure that gets funded if fees increase. And so that's actually, I mentioned to Greg, we have a grant out now. I just submitted a grant to the Integrated Climate Adaptation Planning Grant Program through the Office of Planning and Research to fund an integrated watershed management framework to assess opportunities to basically address shared risk to water infrastructure. Could be stormwater, water supply, wastewater, road infrastructure, even utilities, looking at the shared risk of climate change on these assets and how we can work together to find opportunities and fund projects that provide benefits kind of across the board. So I'm trying to shift the focus away from just the water quality issues towards the broader set of water related resilience issues that we're all facing. So hopefully that helps. And I think it will bring our communities kind of where we need them to be to support agency work, as you know, is not easy to do. And there's often kind of either misunderstanding or poor efforts at engaging communities to do that well. So I'll leave it there. But I appreciate your input and would love to talk more.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm looking around the council. I don't see anybody dying to ask questions, so I will just leave it at, I'm up to 33 notes and questions, and we certainly will engage with you further, Reed. And, we have formed a work group here. Burnett Silviera is going to be leading the effort in El Granada, and I just got some material from Betsy Capel regarding Seal Cove. We are looking for other members of the community to serve on this stormwater work group. Just as we prepared a telecommunications report, we're going to do one for stormwater, and we'll work with you to try and structure it in a way that hopefully allows us to move forward with some action. So I thank you on behalf of the entire council and community. I'm sure we'll hear more about stormwater in the coming months.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is an update on the Community Fiber Network. I proposed a couple of letters. I would like to go through the slide quickly. I know people are fatiguing this late in the evening. So let me see if I can share a screen. Well, maybe I can't share a screen and presentation at the same time. You can see my screen, but you can't see the slideshow. Can you see the slide?
I can see the slide.
Well, sort of. All right, we'll live with what we've got here. So I presented this with Harvey and Matt Chittister's cooperation to the Half Moon Bay City Council on April 18th. I just want to run through it quickly and then get to the letters that I hope the council will endorse. This telecommunications infrastructure is one of 10 things we're worried about. It's interesting, you just saw $500 million in stormwater deficit reserves. You all know we prepared a report. Leo Gomez did the bulk of the work with his crew, and you know we have a problem. So I'll just skip the fact that we have a problem. The report has been updated a little bit. The current version dated April 13th is on the MCC website. And so the choices we face as a community, I see as the following 4 things. Either we do nothing, we just live with our telecommunications problems, or we wait for the oligopoly of cell companies and internet providers or the regulators to try and respond to pressure. And of course, that Ray Mueller has already tried to do something with. And even Leo would tell you he got some traction with AT&T replacing a bank of backup batteries that weren't functioning. So he sent the report out to some people, and he's gotten a little action. We'll see. Another option is to construct a community fiber optic to the present premises, fiber to your home network. And another option is to move somewhere else. So you can't really see this slide. There you go. That's how much faster fiber is than the other alternatives. You can't even see the capacity differences. I got these slides from a Utah-based consultancy that deals with community fiber software and hardware. One of the other things that will come to pass if we get fiber is the speeds of uploading and downloading will be the same. So it'll be symmetrical networks. That's something we don't have right now. And then I cited this case study where a county was assessed, and some of the interesting words were the county took no advantage of these opportunities, offered no strategy to the cities and towns of the county, and provided no oversight of telecommunications services for the county as a whole. There's no competition, digital highways are susceptible to monopoly control, and so forth and so on. But the bottom line was that high-speed internet's become equal to water and electricity. That was Marin County, which had a grand jury in 2019 reach those conclusions, and as a result formed a proactive telecommunications group. So it could be done here. I think our county's situation is somewhat parallel to Marin County, although we don't have a grand jury to prove it. What I want to note is that there are hundreds of locally controlled community broadband networks in the nation. They're all over Colorado and Utah. 82% of North Dakota and 53% of South Dakota landmass is served by fiber from community cooperative networks. Imagine that. And Vermont is really amazing. Well, we have some here, by the way. Atherton and Los Altos, which have some money, are already ahead of us. But we have some other comparative situations which I think give us hope. Down in Santa Cruz, they formed a group with Cruise.io, which some people up here know as coastside.net. Their name has changed. And that group is willing to work with us. They did a 60,000 population city with 20,000 parcels. It was a $50 million investment, and the fees are $75 a month for residential, with higher fees for higher service. What struck me is Woodstock, Vermont, which formed with a population of 3,000, banded together with 24 counties, 24 cities nearby, raised $42 million in initial revenue bonds, and was profitable by year 3 of the venture. They started in 2011. By 2013, they were making money. And their basic speed, 75 megabits per second, $72 a month. And if you understand New England parlance, they offer wicked fast internet at $134 a month for 1,000 megabits, 1 gigabit per second. So it was interesting to see Vermont do this. I'll skip this slide, but basically they decided it was worth it. And there have been local precedents here. In Montera, the residents raised a $20 million bond in 2003 to replace the failing water service. And they get to keep all the money. There's nothing that goes to profits. They don't send any money back to corporate headquarters for administration. The employees that do that are here. And our voices govern the district. And then, as I mentioned, Cruise.io, we've had conversations with them, created community fiber in Santa Cruz. The costs down there are similar to what we pay now, and the speeds are 10 times as fast. So the benefits could be health and safety, including improved emergency communications, modern telehealth, educational improvements. I had some distressing conversations with Alice the other day about how some of the people living on ranches and farms, the kids basically couldn't go to school during the pandemic. They didn't have enough internet, etc. Half Moon Bay has some hopes for business development. They're not going to get that business development without a modern internet. I can speak as somebody who's mentored many ventures and formed some of my own companies. There's no way I would have organized my company over here. And I started a virtual company in 2001, and within 2 years, we had people in 23 states and 4 continents. But we did that from Boston, Connecticut, Maine, and Hillsborough, not from Half Moon Bay. There are benefits in terms of reduced commutes, less vehicle miles traveled, more employment mobility for the people, increased property values, and that's something I can't quantify or explain, which is the capacity for a digital future. I can't tell you what's going to be the standard 10 years or 15 years from now, but I can tell you that to participate in it, we're going to need a modern internet. And by the way, it's a lot faster. And there's some slides here from this consulting firm that just go to show that right now our fiber is used by a single provider, the internet service provider, but we can have a network where providers bid against each other to participate, provide content. Harvey picked up on this right away when he heard the concept, drive the cost down, and we can have public safety, smart grid for the electricity, educational things, senior citizens, all on the same network. Remember how much bigger the capacity was. I'll skip this slide. Leo did a bunch of work to try and lay out a vision for a network that went all the way down to San Gregorio and Pescadero. I'm not saying this is going to come to reality because there are economic obstacles, especially if you read the chart, there's extra high cost to deliver services to some of these areas. But it's possible that we would be able to raise some money because by including underserved communities, they'll help pay for that back. So to do this, we face some unique challenges. We have hilly terrain. We have a distributed population. It's not dense. We have issues with wildfire, earthquakes, tsunamis. You can expect that the oligopoly is going to strike back. The empire will strike back. It will do something to try and prevent us from doing this. In 18 states in the country, the internet providers have got the legislature to pass regulations against community fiber, in spite of which they're still growing like weeds. Okay? And California is a very expensive place to do this. But again, it's been done in Santa Cruz and several other places I've found. And you heard about Marin County. Okay. Some of the opportunities are AT&T's got a fiber backbone. If you read Leo's report, it's way underutilized. Maybe they'd be interested in sharing that and getting more traffic and business. Caltrans also has plans to put fiber under the highway. I mentioned a potential partner in Cruise.io in Santa Cruz. That would be a public-private partnership. And there's some stuff going on at the state. You might have heard about the Middle Mile Initiative. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think what we need to do something is first community concurrence on the priority and policies. And it helps to have Half Moon Bay say they're interested because that doubles the population base. I think we need a partner who's done this before, okay, whether it's Cruise.io or some consultancy or some other vendor who does these services. And then we need some technical consulting, some funding, and a dedicated work group. And I think we have a work group. I've been in touch with Mark Den and Randy Bales, Leo, of course. Who am I forgetting? Scott Pine from CERT. And they've been working with me to discuss this and see what our options are. So our first step is going to be getting a community dialogue and a vision going, which has already been happening with Half Moon Bay. And then we need to do some research on what kind of a legal entity we can create, what kind of organization it has to be able to get money. The first money we need is just for a study. essentially we need a study to find out how much money we need. Okay, so that'll be one of the first efforts. And then we're going to need some technical design. We're going to need some initial subscribers. One possibility is the sewer authority, which has complained about their internet access and their ability to monitor their remote pump stations being inadequate to cell service, and AT&T's giving up on the copper wires we now have. Those are increasingly hard to get service. So we'll see which type of organization we end up forming. It'll probably be based on who steps to the plate with talent, time, and treasure. Other people have done this. They did it incrementally. They started with a backbone on Highway 1. In some places in Colorado, they used fiber that had been laid for the traffic signals and augmented that. You have to create some policies which embody the philosophy of dig once. In other words, you're working on a road. While you're working on that road, lay the fiber and fix the storm drains. Do everything. Okay? So we'll see what we can do in that area. I just want to mention that the California Middle Mile Initiative is underway. I attended a session on that, the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. And as you can see in this red box, they have to commit all of the funds for construction by the end of December 2024, and they have to spend all the money by 2026. So this is going on right now. Now, as a result of that, one of the things that's happening is because it's slow delay cable, they're talking about using something called indefeasible rights of use, or IRUs, to essentially take unused fiber that somebody's already laid and make that part of the network. Now, one could guess what could go wrong under a deadline to spend a lot of money fast, paying existing competitors for use of their cables. One could imagine things might not go well there, but that's what they're trying to do in haste. Okay, so that's going on. What that means is that we might end up getting fiber laid down Highway 1 or the use of AT&T's fiber as part of the statewide initiative. So that's it. I just wanted to let you know that this is a real thing. Yeah, the money's going to be spent by the end of 2026. The only question is, are we going to be part of the group that gets that funding? I didn't show it on a slide here, but there is a document produced that says that basically the people who are going to get the money are those who are ready with a business plan. Well, why don't we start a business plan? Get going, all right? I think we have enough initiative and talent in the area to do that. So to go back to last meeting, you may remember we discussed sending letters out. And Dan made the point that I could send it out as an individual, but not as a council. That was me. Oh, it was you? Okay, I thought it was Dan too. So my thought was, wouldn't it be a lot more forceful to write letters with the approval of the council? And 2 sets of letters. And the letters that are on the website will clarify that the addressees, I've named in generic terms here, like to the CPUC and all communications vendors. Let me show the screen if I can find the share screen button. There it is. So I've drafted up some letters that I hope the council will endorse sending. This one would go to the regulatory agency and each of the vendors identified in the report, Comcast, AT&T, so forth and so on. And we already have the contact names for people at those places, but I didn't want to put them all in the letter. It just cluttered up, okay? And then I wanted to copy the local agencies and the San Mateo County offices. There are several offices in San Mateo County which would be involved. In addition to Ray's, there's the Office of Emergency Services. Dave Cosgrave already attended a presentation I gave at CERT group. All right, and is receptive to the concept of producing this report, publishing it, and then exploring the local community fiber. So we'd send it to those people and we'd say, hey, comment on our report. They may have things they disagree. Okay. Secondly, describe any progress you've made. Thirdly, describe any progress you're committing to make. Okay. And then tell us who's going to answer these questions? Because I find writing a letter without asking for who's going to answer by when is kind of silly. We have to give them a response deadline. All right. So we may not give them a response deadline for all their answers, But by a few days after getting this letter, I want to know them tell us who's going to answer the questions. And I think that's quite reasonable. So that's what I put in this letter. There's another letter that I propose to send that goes to our local agencies. And that letter is to enlist their testimony and support. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I'm taking a minute. But basically send it to Montera, SAM, GCSD, the Rio school system, people who already are known to have telecommunications problems, and ask them to state what their problems were, augment our reports. Let me see if I can find it. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding it. Here it is, local stakeholders. So a second letter I'd like to send would be to these agencies that are part of our community and have them join in by certifying their own experience, augmenting the findings and reports we've made, and then endorsing the problem statement in the report by saying, we agree with this report and we have the following things. I'm not asking people to agree with our recommendations. There were a lot of recommendations. There depended on a lot of factors, asking the CPUC to change regulations and so forth. But we could ask them to agree that we have a problem. And that's basically what I'm asking them to do. And then I propose to take the results of this survey, add it to the report, and then send it to our elected representatives, which would include Supervisor Mueller, but also I've talked to the aides and Senator Beckers and someone in Berman's office, and I know Ray knows Anna Eshu. So we'll take this endorsed, augmented report and send it off and say, we got a problem. What can we do about it? Can we get money to fund it? Can we be in the middle mile program, et cetera? So that's what I'm asking for the council to do, endorse the sending of these letters, and then a few months from now, we'll see where we are. So open for discussion by the council. I think I should have a motion on the table. Is there anybody who would move to adopt these letters? I would.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Council discussion.
I mean, the only thing I have to say is your goal is to get more internet connectivity. We trust you. This seems like a way to do it. I love the idea that it might be less profit and non-profit and controlled by us. Those are all the things that I support. And I would vote for this over and over again.
Okay. Other council members? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused exactly what we're voting for.
You just send a letter.
Clearly, yeah, the letter. What is the letter? What are the ramifications of this letter? That's the question. Devil's in the details. So I understand. Yes, we're making an announcement. That hey, we need better internet service for coast Midcoast. Okay, yeah, everybody knows that. But to develop a letter that's saying, this must be fast tracked and all regulations, should be ignored. What are we really into? That's my question.
The letter to consider.
I think the letter
Says in the report.
Isn't the letter said?
The letter do not endorse the recommendations in the report, endorse the findings of the problem statement. That's what we're asking for endorsement. The problem statement.
Yeah. Well, it's real long. It's real complicated. It's like, here's the thing. We haven't really, yes, right here, right now, we've listened to you, but, now you want us to approve this letter? There's been no real communication, outreach about what are the ramifications of what we're asking.
So we had a report. What
are the ramifications? What's the likelihood? What's the or are we just putting just a bow on a box and giving it to AT&T and Comcast. Is that what this community is doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think the community would like to know and have a little bit more further in-depth discussion about, what will it take?
So
Is there going to be a tree?
Let me just-
A cell tower that looks like a tree.
we had
in my backyard.
we had a presentation from Leo.
I saw that.
Okay,
That
so
was awesome.
okay,
Huh?
that's the problem. You're not talking about cell phones, right? You're talking
Talking about everything.
Well,
Read this.
this report says, this letter says, read the report. We have two sets of problems, cell phone and internet, and there are a variety of causes, lack of redundancy, lack of battery backup, lack of backup generators, all the things that Leo covered in the previous presentation. Okay, so we're asking what they're going to do about those things. That's where we're going. Okay, it doesn't say help us build a community fiber network. We'll see where that goes later. Okay, it just says, are you taking action on these things, Mr. Vendor, Ms. Vendor, or going to our partner agencies and says, do you agree we have a problem? Okay. Other council member comment? And
I agree with you. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And I think this is a great start. And so, I mean, I think this is the right thing to do. And the county is aware of all the deficiencies on the coast. It was especially prevalent during COVID. We knew that the children on the coast suffered more than the rest of the children. I would say through, with the exception of other unincorporated areas, but there's the need here for internet is beyond anywhere else. I mean, we saw again, the schools, our electricity is going out all the time. I mean, we have the most basic of needs here, and you have to start with, I believe, somewhere, and I think this is a great start.
Claire.
I would question down the road exactly what path people are going to end up taking and what the role of the MCC is going to be in that. But I see these letters as an attempt to reach out to all the stakeholders, as they say, and say, look, can we all look at this and work together and figure out what to do next? I don't see how you can object to that.
Okay. Gus, did you have any comment?
Kimberly does.
No, well, I was going through the council voting council. Gus?
Yeah, and I just want to say I think these letters are great, and they serve primarily to, as Claire just said, to reach out to the other people who would potentially be involved in this, to just understand what things are already, like to ask the vendors, what things are you already planning to do? We should know that. And to ask all the other people we would have to work with, do you think this is something we should all be working on? I think those are the natural questions to ask at this point in the process. I see these as basic letters that we should definitely send out.
Kimberly, you had your hand raised, and I want to recognize you.
Thanks. I think Gus expressed what I wanted to express. I also, I think it is the place to start. I appreciate the intent, and I agree with it. I do think there's a little confusion in the letter and just how it's written in terms of, we're sharing information, we're gauging interest, gathering thoughts. So there's the part in the letter where you list what the goal is, the three pieces. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Which, are you talking about the letter to our partner agencies or the letter to the vendors?
I think I'm talking about the letter to the partner agencies.
Yeah, that's this letter here.
So number 2 says your organization's endorsement of our problem statements, which we would append to a future edition and forward with requests for action to appropriate parties. And then at the end, you say, note that we are not asking for your endorsement of our recommendations described in the report. That is a little confusing. And I think I would clean that up a little. But that's my only comment.
It's an edit and type it into chat so we can assess it. Well, I'll take a comment from Len and we'll come back to you. Len, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, I do. Have you talked to some of the communities in the Dakotas to understand that when they undertook this, what kind of a business entity did they have to create to handle the funding involved?
I have not talked to the Dakotas. I've talked to Utah, Vermont, and Colorado.
That's fine. Any place that.
Yeah, they formed a local community fiber cooperative. In the case of Vermont, they banded together in a special agency, special district, we would call it, I think. Okay. Similarly, it was usually a city by city basis in Colorado and Utah. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. You're asking questions about going down the path of forming the local community fiber network. And I'm only asking right now for letters describing the problem and getting people to address the problem. So, but did I answer your question?
Well, I think in terms of the questions that Dan has asked, that understanding what kind of a roadmap you have in mind, and I guess what you're saying is you don't have a roadmap in mind. I think clearly the MCC is not an entity that can do this, so it would have to be something else, and you'll figure that out if you determine there's an actual interest and need that you can document.
Yeah, I skipped through some of the slides. I should have gone slower, Len, but I know it's getting late for the council, and I know you have an agenda item to bring up. But I did have a couple of slides in the presentation on what the different forms of organization could be, public-private partnership, and so forth. It's way premature to make that decision, but certainly it will not be the MCC. It will be a new entity, potentially in partnership with Appleton Bay or part of the county. That's the kind of thing that's going to take some research before we reach a conclusion on where we're going to go. That also presupposes that the problem doesn't get solved somehow magically by the oligopoly.
Okay. So then basically you're assuming that within the framework of our charter, we would recommend to the supervisors that they support and help a step be taken in this direction.
Right. I would ask for the supervisor's help once we fully document the problem, which we're close to doing. Once we get the answers to these letters, I think we'll have a lot of evidence that's compelling.
And do we know now that Mike O'Neill would be our contact for that thing?
I'm assuming Mike would help with this effort. He's shaking his head, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So back to Kimberly. Did you want to propose an edit? Did I miss something, Kimberly? I got to stop sharing my screen.
I just read through it again. I think I'm okay to go with it as is.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to stand in the way of.
Great. I love that attitude. Good enough for government work, we say. So I don't see any other comments, questions.
Yes.
One, Dan.
So one of these letters is addressed to AT&T, Comcast.
Right.
We're an advisory council to the supervisors. So why would we be writing letters to AT&T and Comcast, et cetera?
To represent the community sentiment that they need to fix their services.
And why wouldn't we? I mean, normally this would be handled by the supervisor, the board of supervisors.
I don't know that that's true. I don't know what normally is.
So you're bypassing that.
Well, Ray has seen this. Ray has seen this report. I'll defer to Mike, but I don't see any reason to wait for, the supervisor's office at this time. When we finish gathering the information from the vendors on what they're going to do, and from our partner, stakeholders here on the coast, then we'll go to the supervisors with a full package of evidence and say, we could use your help.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right structure.
Okay, fine. So noted. Yeah, I think it's time to call a vote. Okay.
Are you
Public comment, Mike O'Neill.
I would suggest that one of the resources you contact is the city of San Bruno, is they have been running their own internet for like 30 years. And they are acting, I read an article, I just read the article, right? Didn't go into any depth, that they were looking at upgrading their system to some sort of fiber optics or whatever. So I would reach out because it's a municipality that's been running internet in the same neck of the woods as you, and who knows, you might even be able to tap into theirs you know, if it works. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Mike. I didn't know that. All right, back to Len. Did you fail to lower your hand, or is this a new question?
No, just in follow up to that, you've been in touch with Half Moon Bay, and clearly the city of Half Moon Bay is an entity. So that would seem like a logical place to look to undertake the kind of query that Mike just pointed us at.
They don't run an internet. Mike's point was Santa Bruno is already running an internet. That's what the value add there is. Yes, Half Moon Bay did confirm to me, Matt Chedester did confirm to me in writing, and you heard Harvey say they are interested. But that's a second step. We're just voting on these letters right now, which we can call team building or collaboration or fact finding, whatever you want. Okay, back to the vote. Greg? Yes.
Which letter are we?
We're voting on the two letters.
Two at the same time?
One. I didn't hear a problem with that. That was the motion.
Is that?
All right, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to make an amendment that we split them up. Two separate votes.
Do we have a second for Dan's amendment? Hearing none. Back to the vote. Okay. Dan?
Yes.
Gus?
Yes.
Dan?
No.
And I'm voting yes. So Claire? I'm sorry. Claire?
Yes.
Sorry, apologize for that. So it's 5-1 and passes to send both letters. Okay. All right. Now I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with Zoom here. I apologize. I believe the next agenda item, Len, is yours, and I need to make you co-host. I'm sorry.
I think I'm already your co-host, aren't I?
Well, let's just be sure. If you think you can share your screen, please do it. You're not a co-host according to this, but you are.
You're right. I'm not.
You are now. You are.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, I had my hand up. Can I ask a quick question?
I'm sorry. I was having trouble here. I couldn't see.
I know. I figured that. I saw the person's name that you introduced just as I was tuning in, but he mentioned something about Ray being at Cafe Mezzaluna tomorrow, I think. Could he type into chat since he's not at his own computer so the rest of us can find out more about that event or what the subject of it was going to be?
Sid, if you text me, I will send you the Ray schedule, which I have on my computer.
So I'm note of that to ask.
So we'll get that to you,
and I'll get it down. But it was going too quick for me to write it down.
I can speak to it.
Oh, Claire can speak to it.
The announcement was that Ray Mueller and Deborah Penrose are having a joint office hours at Cafe Mezzaluna tomorrow from 8:30 to 10, and the public is welcome to come talk with them.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay, so now we're back to Len, and you should be able to share your screen when you're ready, Len.
Hey, it should be up.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. This is one of the work groups that Greg identified was transportation. It's a fairly broad area. So I've taken on to provide support for that. From a label standpoint, I guess I would call myself a volunteer coordinator in that I'm not trying to approach this from a policy standpoint so much as get the various agencies, members of the council, et cetera, connected on transportation. And so I want to just give a quick summary of what that looks like and take comments on that. So basically, so the scope is projects that involve state roads, local roads, trails, and parking. The major reference documents are Connect the Coast Side, which is a study and was adopted by the council, recommended by the council, adopted by the supervisors as it in place with a number of recommendations. And then the MCC website, where we have worked to try to keep that document up to speed on the different projects. So I would say in background that on the county side, the Joe LeClaire, who was in charge of the planning group, had retired some time ago, but he now has a replacement, started recently. His name is Bharat Singh. He's new to the area, but is in that position. And then Shanta Singh, who was the senior planner, has been on a maternity leave, but she is due to be back shortly. So that we're about to have people come on board there. from a what does a volunteer coordinator do, looking to facilitate communication and plan reviews between the MCC and parties involved in active projects, and work with the chair to define the actions of ad hoc committees as required to do this, and then provide both community study sessions as needed, and basically if the recommendations come forward from an ad hoc committee, it would be the responsibility of members of that committee to bring it forward. The initial focus is there are currently 3 major funded Highway 1 projects. One is a multi-asset roadway rehabilitation. That's an overall improvement of Highway 1 between south of Half Moon Bay to the airport. Second is a Moss Beach congestion and safety improvement projects. We sometimes refer to it as the Moss Beach Corridor Project, funded by the SMC Transit Authority. And then a Midcoast side transportation demand management that is also funded by the Transit Authority. So to go forward from this, I was looking to focus specifically on the multi-asset rehabilitation project and with specific emphasis on the impacts of winter storms. Later on, there will be activity at the Medio Creek crossing of Highway 1, where there's already one new bridge in place. Another bridge is going to go away, and the K-rails that have supported the coastal trail will go away, and the culvert is being evaluated. So those, I think, are all things that could fall under the umbrella of the multi-asset roadway. They've put forward a document already, so this requires looking at their problems and deciding whether we should request them to review that. Coming off of the last meeting for the MCC, when we talked about this, Dan Haggerty and Gus Matamal had been identified, and Ann Rothman also agreed to join the project, so that constitutes the ad hoc committee. To give a little focus here, between November and February 23, I have pictures that show what's happened on the highway. This involved both the degradation of the armoring, which slumps dramatically in places, the concrete next to the coastal trail, the paved coastal trail has had sections taken away. You can see those here. And then the bridge, all of its wood superstructure is gone. And then another interesting thing that has happened is that with nearly all of the protective vegetation that anchored the bluffs next to the armoring of Surfers Beach, all of that vegetation is basically dead. And so as the wave action comes, it is pushing sand up into the beach, and consequently there's a fairly easy to walk path from the beach directly over up to the Coronado intersection. And just casual observation shows that in terms of getting to Surfers Beach, you see people coming down to use this way to get there. So in addition, there's some further considerations. One is Granada Community Park, and I will show this. This is the Granada Community Park, which is, they're preparing to bring that forward for permitting. The impact feature it has here is on the picture I'm showing here. This arrow points to the section of parking for Surfers Beach that is considered to be in the right-of-way of Caltrans for Highway 1. This is an area that in Half Moon Bay, as they moved the East Side Trail forward, the multimodal parallel trail has gone there, and certainly parking goes there informally. The consideration I have is to confirm with Caltrans whether they have on their roadmap, if you will, the treatment for this parking as they do the rehab project for the highway itself. So, and then from a long-term standpoint, and this is not in the scope of what the ad hoc committee is doing, but it's important to realize that at Surfers Beach, there's a continual erosion of the beach itself, and you can see in this transition going from 93 up to 2022 that the RSP, the riprap, if you will, arming has extended year by year, and the picture I showed you reflects even further action in that way. These are the maps of projects in Connect the Coast Side that are relevant to these areas, and from the standpoint of a ad hoc committee or the workshop group itself, we need to understand, what things are going forward and what's their place. So that's the background. What I'm looking to do is come away from this meeting with agreement with the council that those three people would be an ad hoc committee. I've tried to reach out to the Coastal Commission, Caltrans, and a party within the county to look at the area. I've heard back from the Coastal Commission that they're open to do it, and that would be the first step to proceed. Any questions or comments?
You want to take your screen down, or you still have things to share?
Sure. No, I'll take the screen down. You can take it off there. Let's see. Here we go. Oops. Go up here.
So,
okay, should be back.
Point of information, I thought we agreed in previous meetings when we filled out the spreadsheet with assignments and volunteers that we had already formed the ad hoc committee, which we call a work group, with the people you designated, Dan, Gus, and Ann. So I thought that was already publicly.
That's fine. Just reconfirming, and I've already been in touch with them.
Well, Len, I thank you for leading this effort. I know that you have decades of involvement in this topic, and it's really important because we have so many new council members for there to be some transition of this thought leadership. So I appreciate your work here.
Yeah, I really appreciate everything he's been pointing out to me. Thank you.
And Ann likes you too.
The one thing I'll say, this is going back to Catherine's comments at the beginning of the meeting. I have basically, I'm in touch with three people at the Coastal Commission. One is the person who deals with maintenance and repairs of the highway. He's already been down here, I think. Also, there's a woman who handles the area broadly for Caltrans. The third person is man who's really been our primary representative for most review issues. And he's the person who would be involved in looking at the long-term armoring, sand replenishment, etc. And I reach out to him, Greg, I'd sort of bring you into that directly.
Okay, thanks. I see we have a question from the public. Fran Pollard has raised her hand. Fran, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize if my computer seems the sound has gotten tinny now. But anyway, I'm glad. Thank you, Len, for doing that. That looks good. I brought it up at the Planning Commission this morning about the sinkhole there, and try to encourage them. Of course, you never get any answers from them, but I wanted them to encourage to get in touch with both the city of Half Moon Bay and Caltrans to fix that before it undermines the highway and we have to replace the highway. And so I'm hoping you're going to do that or send the letter to them.
No, as you said, Caltrans Maintenance has already looked at it. The Coastal Commission came out to review it, and they're reviewing it as a maintenance issue. There's some of the things I showed you. The question on the stairway is whether the stairway is still the best way to get down, or would this alternate route be sufficient? But basically, replacement of the stairway would fall under storm damage issues. But it's the riprap, the rock itself, that is also sort of, in a sense, slowly degrading, and that's a separate question. But and I think it's Caltrans maintenance, supported some by DPW, who's involved in the roadway, but really it's Caltrans that we're looking for to make the first actions.
So are they getting out there to do it soon, or what?
Well, so within Caltrans, there are two groups. There's a group doing the multi-asset project, and some of these things are beyond the scope of maintenance. So it's basically having Caltrans look at that part of the process and see what's maintenance and what are change conditions that might fall under the multi-asset or a totally different project. Just getting people to agree to look at it with us and communicate on this. And also I'll reach out to the supervisor's office. That'd probably be Mike, just to get him in the loop as well.
So what I hear him saying, Fran, is he's trying.
Yeah, but that's been like that for a month now, and nobody's doing anything. I mean, isn't that considered an emergency situation, and it should be done as soon as possible?
The trail is the one that's been impacted, the roadway not yet, although it's clearly a threat. And then the long-term assessment of the armory is part of the picture. So you really have three different parties within council.
Yeah, Half Moon Bay also.
And Len, I would comment, we previously, earlier this year, I showed slides of the lake that was formed across from the airport on Highway 1 on December 31st. So when they get around to the multi-asset roadway project, and this overlaps the stormwater presentation we just had, it's pretty clear there's inadequate drainage there and that the roadway is threatened. It was dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I'll do that at the same time in a separate process, talk about the Medio Creek area where there's a number of issues. So I will put that in the same conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to, can I ask?
Dan has a comment, question?
Lynn, about the Medio Creek area. Last meeting, you were asking some pointed questions to DPW in regards to the Medio Creek culvert being used as a safe passage for cyclists and hikers. By the way, they've been using that for decades. You seem to ask, is it a problem with DPW? You were leading for him to say, yes, it was a problem. And now you're saying, there's other problems with the Medio Creek area. And you mentioned with our phone call conversation that there wasn't enough width on the east side of highway at the culvert. And it seems like it's all leading towards, is Caltrans going to make that whole area wider? And you appear to be talking with Caltrans. You know a lot more than this council knows as far as what their plans are.
Yeah, what I want to make clear on that is I talked specifically about them as well as DPW. The issue is the culverts there are a part of the multi-asset project. And when they reported back on that, they hadn't completed that review. Now, since then, several large eucalyptus have been removed. The multimodal parallel trail has been put in. And still to come is all of the K-rails need to be removed and the road restored once the new Medio Creek Bridge at the coast site goes in. And per DPW, they need to get that completed, and then Caltrans can be asked to come in and look at the overall picture, including the culverts, the roadway, shoulders, etc. So that's why I broke it out as a separate item. So right now, there's no question down at Surfers Beach, there's some level of storm damage, and to get clarity there. And I think the advice from DPW is you need to get the K-rails replaced and the road restored before they finish their inspection of that area.
So are you going to defend the use of that the culvert as a safe crossing? Are you going to defend that, or the community has been defending that for years, and I think you're aware of that.
Oh yeah, that's been reported since the very first safety and mobility study was done, and the response of government at all levels seems to be, we understand it, we're not trying to barricade it out, it's not something we approve, and it stays in that position.
So should Dan just anticipate, I mean...
When they make final statements about the culverts themselves, yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that area should be looked at as a whole, and it's going to be best to do it once the K-rails are removed and the roadway is restored. Then Caltrans will be able to look at the current state of that area. The trees have been removed, the multimodal parallel trail bridge is there, and so it's just getting the roadway itself back to its original condition for Caltrans to complete their review and make recommendations on culverts and other features.
Yeah, there should be a public outreach discussion about, how to move forward. Thank you.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, and to be clear, the ad hoc committee has both the responsibility to look at the Surfers Beach area and the area of Medio Creek, but it's just they're going to be two different processes.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Len, for attending and for your leadership on this. Council activity. You've already heard what I've been doing on the Middle Mile Advisory Committee, working with Half Moon Bay on the formation of Community Fire Network, getting letters out, and stormwater stuff. So I'm done. Who else has council activity that they want to discuss? Claire.
I represented the MCC on birthday for a VIP tour of projects that Pacific Beach Coalition is doing. Got to ride around on a bus with Anna Eshu's staff people and watch people work. I was very impressed with what they're doing. I think they actually are taking responsibility for the harbor and for Surfers Beach, so we may want to have them come talk to us at some point. They seem to have mobilized the community in Pacifica in ways that we do not seem to be able to do. It was very interesting, and I was happy to go.
Do you think it was mobilized because they offered free food and a bus trip, or?
No. I think they've got a good program going there. They've got Boy Scouts and everybody involved in their projects. They've got lots of kids, lots of parents that are really committed to their projects, and I admire what they're doing. I think they're doing a good job.
Did you get contact information for any of SU's aides? We could use that going forward. If you have that later, you can.
I can.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I've been going to the San Mateo County Parks meeting in person. And the only thing I want to say, when we have more time, we'll talk about different their meetings are from ours, and they don't have a secretary. But they are going to release a lot of baby salmon in the harbor that's going to support the fishing industry and sport fishing industry. Because I thought it was very interesting. But it doesn't all the meeting doesn't pertain just to us, it pertains to all of it. But that was the thing I found most interesting.
This is the Parks Department?
Yeah.
Where are these salmon? That's really great.
They're coming from Asbury. Yeah. And I asked them, well, where are they going to go back to?
Yeah, exactly.
It's somewhere way north.
They're going to figure that out. They're going to magically figure out what it's like.
That's what I asked them. I waited after to ask me this question. Where do you think they're going to go? And they said back to where they're originally at.
They know where they came from. They were doing some of this kind of thing south of us where they release the salmon into the streams, and then they know where to go back to.
I think they have to be, well, I don't know, but that's what they.
Any other council member activity?
Well, I went to the Board of Supervisors, but we've already had a report. Oh, we had our report from the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, yeah, you heard from Mike. So. All right, now, Sid, your hand is up. I don't know why. You don't have
because I just had a quick question for Claire. She mentioned riding around on a bus with Anna Eshu, and they have a really vibrant program. Was she talking more about Anna Eshu or the Pacifica Beach Coalition with Lynn Adams?
I wish you would listen, Ms. Sid, because we were repeating things over and over. I was talking about the Pacific Beach Coalition.
Okay, because then Greg said Anna Eshu, and it was because they had a bus. So then I got confused. Thank you.
All right. I'm pleased to see that once again I'm terribly wrong, and that we're now down to future agendas. So we can, to keep on schedule, either wait an hour or go ahead.
Do we need to vote on that?
So future agendas, I'm aware, Claire, you're going to work on an agenda, Coastal Armory with
Kimberly and Lisa.
Right. And we need to set a date for a retreat. Let me come back to that. On public health.
already have May 6th?
Wait a minute. On public health, Mike, I want you to be aware, I sent you an email during the meeting, I'll get it later. This is December, when Jill Grant was on that group with me, we asked the public health to come talk to us about fentanyl and other dangerous substances. In the interim, Sam proposed measuring wastewater, dangerous substances as we do with diseases, and Sam ordered you to pay for it, Half Moon Bay specifically, because they didn't see that as a sewer cost. It's numbers are in the email on what it will cost, and I forwarded that request to the contact who eventually got back to me from public health. But we're looking forward to a presentation from them, and I won't even bother saying the date because you're saying there's other things that they're doing which would probably affect the scheduling. But I just want to make you aware that we're looking forward to hearing from public health on dangerous substances and the issue of funding testing in the wastewater plant, like we do for diseases. All right, back to the retreat. Claire, you were trying to schedule a date for us. Give us an update on what you've heard from the various people and what you stand.
I've heard from Pacifica TV, who I do not think we're going to need, but we'll confirm that. I've heard from Ray Mueller's office. I've heard from every member of the council except for Dan Agri. And we have 4 dates that everybody who's responded can make. And let's see, it's in an email that I sent to you, Greg. Do you have that there?
I can pull it up.
We're finding it for 4 hours. It's an important thing to do because it's a chance where we can actually talk to each other about things without having to go quite as procedurally, and we can set communication standards and set our priorities for the year. I believe it was a Monday and 2 Mondays and 2 Wednesdays are available. Let me see if I can bring that up here.
I'm having problems finding it. I've got so many emails from you.
I sent it to everybody, so somebody probably has it.
We need your availability for the retreat now.
No, keep going. It's just a little slow hitting it. You've got it.
I got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, what are the final 4?
We have Monday, May 1st, Wednesday, May 3rd, Monday, May 15th, and Wednesday, May 17th.
I'm suggesting that the best one might be the 17th because it's a Wednesday. We're used to meeting on Wednesdays, and it gives Greg a little bit of time to line up anybody that you want to meet to join us.
Well, I agree with that. I was going to say the council, we have not yet discussed what it is we want to cover in the retreat. And we could do a little of that right now. Just set the stage for what kind of preparation. If we were to hold this meeting next week, I don't know what we would have for Ray. I mean, we have a bunch of presentations that he hasn't seen, but the council's seen a ton of them. So I think I would like to talk to Mike about what Ray's agenda might be for the retreat, get some feedback there. As well as talk to the council and listen to you all right now about what you want to see us cover on the retreat. Obviously, some of my priorities are going to be, well, what about this telecommunications thing? You've been working with Comcast. What's happened? What about stormwater? But what else? Mike, you want to say?
I was just going to say, I haven't specifically talked to Ray about your goal setting,
right,
or retreat, whatever. But in my past experience in the school board and the city council, it's kind of really free flowing. There might be a budget presentation, but then again, that's incorporated, you're unincorporated. So it's more free flowing. What would be your priority? Because just from the couple of meetings I've been to, you seem to have like real shotgun of a lot of things. But I think it would be best for you guys to try to focus on 1 or 2 items that can have and all of them are long term, that might have measurable results for you to get to it. I can see, and I can't make any promises, but I can see if there could be some sort of facilitator. In a lot of the goal settings, there's usually a facilitator that's a neutral person that kind of talks to, make sure everybody's heard, no one person's monopolized it. That's something I could check into. I don't know.
You mean I don't have to play cop?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's available. I'm not making a comment.
All right.
I'm just doing inquiry. So I would just say an agenda. I mean, I could go find an agenda from the couple of city council in Pacifica, and they're just worded to discuss projects for the next year or something.
All right, well, it'd be fine if you would share that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
What other off-the-cuff comments do we have from people in Egypt or here?
So I was talking to Claire about this today, and I think a lot of the sort of work groups have taken a lot of little hanging fruit, and we know about parks and sewer and all that stuff. Some comments were made, and I kind of clung on to them a little bit. One of them was, the money, our taxes go out at a certain volume, at a rate, and they come back into our county at a certain rate. I just want to know, do we get the amount back that we send? I'm gonna try to figure that out. I'm interested in that one thing. The second,
So just as a quick comment.
Yes.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I wrote, what's the name of the controller for the county? Figueroa, something like that?
No.
It's Juan Ragoza.
Figueroa, thank you. I wrote Juan, copied Don Horsley or
Yeah.
something, and I said, can you give us a breakdown? Tax monies collected versus expenditures. And I was told that breakdown did not exist.
We'll break it down.
I have since received other information from a deep throat source that such a breakdown does exist, but they didn't want to share it with us.
All right.
So that's a good question.
Yes.
So
And
put it in the minutes that you want to cover essentially the flow of funds to and from the Midcoast.
it might be we get more than we put in. Not.
No.
Good to know.
No, we provide an extra 17% property tax revenue to the county because we are unincorporated and we are not getting it back.
All right.
I'll jump to that conclusion.
I've actually seen it, I think, at one of the Board of Supervisors meetings, when they had their budget discussed, you could see where the monies were going, and there was virtually nothing in Midcoast.
Well, we do get things.
But
But not in comparison to,
you bet it would be wonderful. You're going to share.
Verification though, because some of this, look at your tax bill, and it clearly states where each thing goes. By going back to Midcoast, do you mean just to Midcoast, or do you also mean Cabrillo Unified School District? That's,
I mean, your point is your point.
Yeah, and there's also the mosquito abatement district, okay,
And a stormwater fee.
Pardon?
And a stormwater fee.
Yeah. Not to be argumentative, I think you have to have a clear definition
I agree with you.
of what is going back to Midcoast, because from my perspective, going to the schools is going back to Midcoast.
We agree.
Yeah, we agree.
yeah.
You know,
We agree, Mike.
Yes.
All right.
So
The other one is we keep talking about that, well, some of us do about the public housing that's gonna go into Long Beach.
Oh, the Cypress Point project by Midpen.
And I, for my own benefit, I'd like to know who is helping, who they think what's the reason they're putting it there? And if there's not a good one, get it on the ballot, stop it.
So,
I mean, because it might be a great idea.
first point of order,
Yes.
note to the secretary to write these agenda topics down in the minutes and publish them post haste, as you're our record keeper. So listen to yourself on the recording. We're counting on you to take these notes. Those are good agenda topics. Do we have other council suggestions?
well, there was still that, this is off a different topic, but the monies that was given for the bike program for children, I'm still working to get the amount. That's just another item, but it was already approved in, for, I think it was South San Francisco. They did it. So
She said bike. What did you call it?
oh, it was, let me see.
There's some confusion about that. Which kids are you going to give the bikes to?
So it was Measure A.
It was,
Measure K?
Yes.
let me see. It was on, I'm so sorry.
You mean you want to know if we got it? We got Measure K money.
No, what it was is there's a program that they use Measure K funds for to help give bicycles to children who don't have them in underserved areas. And they did it through the schools, and they were, and they had an entire weekend where they had events for the children. They gave them the bikes. I would like to see if we can kind of do a similar program and finding out through our schools what the need is. One, and then I wanted to also see, can we even do it on a reward basis somehow, maybe for students who do community service or, of course need, but I would like to see maybe something else tied into it, and then do a similar program with the day that they did with the teaching the kids who have never rode a bike how to ride.
Sounds like Dan Rodman will provide you with a couple of paragraphs.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Okay.
But I will do that. And it was a really great program that they approved the monies for, and it seemed like something I think kids on the coast will really benefit from.
Let me just throw something out here. I'm not the expert on this, but we have a lot of stuff going on around the harbor. We have a question of the jetty being pulled out, I'm told. Did I hear that from Heflin?
Don't.
We don't know. Stuff with Ray. Is there anything on the harbor district or the harbor that we think we want him to take action on and should discuss with him?
Well, we can find that out when talking with his office, but we've already invited the harbor master to come to our meetings regularly. He hasn't come. I think that's where we should start, is to find out what's going on there, and that would be a good person to start asking.
So to your point, take a note that I'm going to invite Jim Pruitt to join us on May 10th, because that will dovetail with the armory presentation that you're doing it. So he already agreed in concept to come. He just doesn't, he doesn't.
He's got other things to do.
He's got other things he's working on. He's got major capital projects that he's doing. All right. So you'll make sure I get that note to remind me. I'll ask him tomorrow.
That's going to be in red. Invite Jim Pruitt from the harbor.
He's the general manager. Yeah. Is there anything else about the harbor that we would want to discuss at the retreat? Kimberly.
You think they're going to blow up the break wall?
No.
No.
No. That's why I don't want to do that.
Go ahead.
So I'm sorry, but I'm a little confused. You circulated a list. We went over a list of priorities previously. Are you asking for what are the priorities? Are we deciding the priorities at the meeting, or this is just what we're prioritizing for the retreat?
For the retreat only, to discuss with Ray, what specifically are we going to look for him to help us with?
And these should be subsets of the priorities we've already discussed and decided on?
Well, I don't think there's a ground rule for that. I mean, we could even introduce, a balloon festival if we wanted, but yeah, you would think there would be subsets of what we already identified as our priorities. If there's something that we want to tell Ray about and ask for his support.
I guess I'm a little confused about the goal for what you're asking and the goal for the retreat.
My goal for the retreat is to align Ray with our interests. What do the other council members have to say? Speaking as veterans who've done on multiple retreats before, Dan and Claire.
Well, I don't think it's about Ray per se. I think it's deciding where we're going to put our efforts and getting finding ways that we can get Ray's support for the things that we most want to do, and get his perspective on things that he wants to do that we might be able to help him with.
He already has initiatives underway.
Yeah, about what we want to get done throughout the year as a council and how we are going to collaborate, core, all that stuff.
Traditionally, Don would come and tell us what he was interested in, and then he would kind of leave. What I think we're hoping for is we tell Ray what we're interested in getting done. He tells us what he's interested in getting done, and then we see how we can work together. That's what we're hoping for, I think.
Okay. Kimberly, does that help?
That helps. So, no, it does help. So we need to go into that retreat fully prepared with what we want to push forward. Is that correct?
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to just walk into a room without a discussion outline.
What about using that list of priorities that you already put together?
That's what she suggested,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think that list is very large, so we need to narrow it down to our, top 3 to 5.
I will accept feedback from the council. Does somebody want to work with me on preparing the retreat agenda? Does somebody want to volunteer to be a small group? Oh, wait a minute. Who's raising their hand? Claire's you were volunteering to do this. Okay. So we've got Claire and I. Anybody else want to be involved in this? You guys been doing the Bertram or? I don't think so. We could. You want donuts? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, but I didn't think of that. But yeah, that'd be great. I would do it in person.
But if we do it by Zoom, you won't attend?
Probably not.
Okay. All right. Well, so I heard Scott and everybody else seems fine.
Well, because I could throw my hat in if we were on Zoom. Zoom is easier for me than in person. But
Well, I don't.
so we can
We can't do 4. We can only do 3.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Then whichever you
I'm not sure
decide.
that's true, but
No, that's not true. You can do all 5 as long as you agendize it for a public meeting.
We don't want to do that.
We would have to keep minutes. But I think you can get this just an ad hoc committee. You go down the agenda for the retreat. I don't want to go to the trouble.
Well, I thought it'd be good for me to learn and so.
Yeah, you do. But I made a note in the last.
All right, we'll include Ann.
We can do it.
We'll include Ann and we'll do it by Zoom, and Scott will have to get his donut somewhere else.
Oh.
I don't still get them?
Maybe. All right, so that is a discussion of the retreat. Are there other agenda items people want to nominate? Sid, you have your hand up. You're nominating a agenda item here?
I just wanted to piggyback on, I forget, I think it was Ann Rothman said that, no, whoever said about where the tax money goes and the 17% that doesn't come back to the coast that the cities get back. And I personally have been asking Ray for months now to find out how it is that the county decides on what they're going to spend their money on. And they are going into a budget thing pretty soon for next year. I would like to know who decides, for instance, is it the Parks District Manager, Nicholas, who decides that they're going to spend $27 million of capital improvement money over 5 years at Flood Park, and Quarry Park gets $213,000, of which $350 was taken from Midcoast Parks Mitigation Fund and Granada Services District. And so basically they made money on our pump track. So I don't know how they decided that the coast side gets just such a small amount and Flood Park gets more. And he said he was going to ask Mike Callaghy, the county executive, how that process works, because he's fairly new as well. Maybe you guys want to ask Mike Callaghy to come to a meeting.
You know, you made me think of an important agenda topic too, which is how we communicate with Ray. And how much we communicate with Mike and Gina, and guidelines for communication. Because if we have 4,000 residents all contacting Ray Mueller asking for something.
That's the purpose of the MCC.
That's my.
We're the liaison between the community.
We have a crack at funneling this stuff to Ray, you know, and coordinating it rather than bombarding him with whoever the most vocal caller is. So I'd like to have that brought up at the retreat. Some process for coordinating communication with the county personnel and how much we use Mike and whether we need 2 mics or more of Mike or whatever. So is that a valid agenda topic in the sense of the county?
Mm-hmm. Right. Process for coordinating communication
with the county.
With the council?
Right. And I would like to just say for the record, I know Ray is going to be overwhelmed. He's new and he had a disaster on his hands and he had to start 2 days early without a staff because of a disaster. I think we can be an asset to his office by doing some of the staff work for him if we're just empowered to do it. You know, research, you know, like that. Just a thought. I mean, we kind of do.
I just want you to know, Greg, that I have Ray's personal cell phone number because I supported him for a long time and met him way back when I took Committee for Green Foothills Community Advocates Leadership Training Academy. And I just wanted you to know that yesterday at the Board of Supervisors, he got flamed by 2 of the supervisors. So I talked to him today. He called me. So I'm not trying to bombard him with anything, but I do think it would be a good idea to find out from Mike Callaghy how the county decides on the funding for the Midcoast and the whole county.
We noted your point. And I have Ray's phone number too, and I try not to use it.
And so do I. So do lots of people. Too many people probably. All right. So say something. I want to say to Mike because we have been without anybody who's been a liaison for us for 4 months now, and I was beginning to despair that we were going to get anybody good. And I'm really impressed tonight. I really am glad you're here. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Donuts.
Wow. Yeah, I'll do my duties.
No, thank you. That's me for donuts. All right, so I think we've covered potentially 2 agenda topics for 510. We have a harbor report and we have the armory. We can have another round of what we're going to do at the retreat because if we're picking the 17th, did I hear we're picking the 17th?
I'm suggesting the 17th makes the most sense.
All right, can we have a motion on the table? I nominate that we pick May 17th for the retreat. That would be a Wednesday evening.
A second.
We have a second and a motion. Discussion? Greg? I was asking for discussion.
Saturdays are not, historically we've had them on Saturdays.
We could not really find a weekend day that everybody could come.
Okay. All right, so you recommend May 17th.
That's another Wednesday.
What time?
We're suggesting 6 to 10. That's up in the discussion though.
I'd like to see start. We don't need PCT, right?
I don't think we
We
do.
don't have to have PCT.
Yeah. Normally, I think our regular meetings should be regular. This is not a regular meeting. I think bumping it a little earlier. I think we should. In the past, we've had a dead close off time of 9:30 p.m. every night. So I don't want to get in the habit of going into late meetings like right now is late. And it takes me another half hour to pack up everything.
We have a recommendation. Can you recommend what time you want?
So I'm recommending let's start at 5 on May 17th, 5 to 9.
I work across the hill and I can't leave until 5. So I don't mind you guys. I'm just going to get there late.
What time would be the earliest you could arrange to be here, Gus?
I mean, whatever traffic allows me to, cause I'm leaving at 5. That's
Where are you leaving from?
Palo Alto.
I think 6 sounds like a.
Yeah,
I can't make it.
I gotta give Gus time to get home, get organized, have a breath, etc. So it sounds like 6. But the end point is he doesn't want to run late.
So let's just streamline it. Let's just not be windy with our words.
So I think on May 10th agenda, we will revisit the agenda for the retreat.
Let's not revisit the time and date though.
No, the time and date is, we're about to vote on.
Okay.
So we're voting on May 17th at 6 p.m.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Greg?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Alma, yes. And Dan?
Yes.
Okay. 6-0.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
He stays up at 4 in the morning. They get ignored.
All right. Want you to adjourn this?
Second. Do we need a vote? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay. So moved. Adjourned. Thank you all for your time. Let me take a minute here. As you know,
recording stopped.
I have to do a few homework things here to preserve the transcript and the chat log.